Welcome, everybody. Tonight, we're privileged to have Jason Oleham, KM4ACK, with us. If you were with us last October, we did a presentation on both ham pie and build a pie, and Barry gave that presentation, and Jason's name came up pretty frequently in all of that, as he is the creator of build a pie. We are not going to revisit the technical details of that. I'm sure it's going to come up here in a little bit, but it's not a deep dive into build a pie. When Jason and I were talking over the past, actually, I guess we first talked by phone a couple months ago, and began to arrange for this. We're going to try something a little bit different tonight than what we're used to. I am the lucky guy that gets to conduct an interview, and we're going to hear in Jason's own words some of his history and such. Well, I'm going to take the screen here in just a second, but Jason's celebrity, besides being pretty popular in the ham crowd with on the YouTube channel, he is turns out to be honored as the member spotlight in the QST magazine for April. So congratulations and a pat on the back to you for that recognition. If you haven't, if you don't get QST, or if you get it but haven't been on the online version, I haven't received the paper copy yet. So this is from the online version that just got accessible last week. Welcome, Jason, to the Tri-Lakes Monument Ham Radio monthly virtual meeting. And thanks for taking time out of your schedule, because anybody who has been monitoring his activity and on the forum and on his publishing of the YouTube videos, he is a busy man. And so we're really excited to get more acquainted. And thanks very much for coming.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me here. It's an honor to be here this evening to get to talk to you for a little bit.
So bear with me. I am. This isn't something that I do very often. I mean, I'm not mic frightened, but I'm not quite used to conducting an interview. I'm going to ask Greg if you would kind of keep an eye on the chat line, and feel free to ask questions. We've got a couple of things that we're going to go through initially, but I expect that we're going to have a good bit of time for questions at the end. So don't hesitate to ask, and I'm not going to be paying attention to that while we're talking. But if something comes up, if you would interject, Greg. So, Jason, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, where you've lived, what you do for a living, and just introduce yourself, if you would.
Sure, and to calm your nerves a little bit, it's funny how we all can grab a mic and talk on the radio, but as soon as you turn the camera on and point it at us and ask us to talk, we go brain dead. I can tell you a lot of stories about first starting the YouTube channel. Guys, I'm Jason, KM4ACK. I run a little YouTube channel that focuses primarily on two things. It focuses on using a Raspberry Pi with ham radio, and then it focuses on going portable with your radio and your Raspberry Pi, and just getting out and exploring and trying different things. So I live just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in a little town called Murfreesboro. Population's about 150,000 people. And I first got my license in 2014. And to start the YouTube channel, a little bit of that background on that. When I was first learning the Raspberry Pi, I was trying to get Pat Winlink installed on that Pi. and I was searching high and low for information. And Martin does have some information in the Wikipedia on the PAT website, but I was looking for a YouTube video and it just didn't exist. So once I finally beat my head against the wall long enough, I figured out how to install Pat WinLink and get it running. And I thought others might want to come behind me and see a video on that. So if you go back and watch, it's one of my earliest videos. You won't watch it for very long because looking back, it's actually pretty terrible. And I've learned a little bit since then. But that's kind of the way I got started in the YouTube world.
Well, let's back up a little bit. You said you got licensed in 2014. What motivated you to do that?
Let me see if I can pull something off here on the fly. I did grab some images, and hopefully you can see those now on your screen.
Yep, we can.
So this was an EF4 tornado that passed within 1,000 yards of my house in 2009. It wiped out, if I remember correctly, about 850 homes. We lost power for probably 2 or 3 days. We lost cell phones for 30 hours before text messaging started coming back. And it was this event that really got me thinking about preparedness in a total sense. I've actually done a video on this and how I got started. When this came through, I didn't even own a generator at the time. So that was kind of the first things that what I understood I started with. But as I continued on in the journey, communications eventually came up. And I'm going to see if I can get you guys now reverse the process of what I did here. There we go. I should be back on screen now. But my brother-in-law is a ham radio operator, and he was the one, as I was kind of fumbling my way through this preparedness thing and trying to figure out how never to be caught flat-footed again, he introduced me to the world of ham radio. And it took me a while to make up my mind and determine that that was exactly what I was going to do. But that one tornado was the biggest driving factor in me eventually becoming a ham radio operator.
So after you decided, was your brother-in-law instrumental, or did you have any other Elmers, or how did you go about getting connected with the community?
So this is a kind of almost a comical story. I'm self-employed with my day job, and it was in March of that particular year. Well, once April kicks off our business, we go to 6 to 7 days a week working, and that lasts for 3 to 4 months. So I started looking in March for a place to take the test and try to gather some more information. And it turned out there was a test coming up an hour and a half from home, 10 days from the day I found it. And I hadn't even opened a book. So I literally downloaded an app for the phone and read and studied and took practice tests almost nonstop for 10 solid days. And absolutely was sweating bullets when I took my tech test. But I passed it without any issues. And well, the rest is kind of history beyond that.
So can I assume then you don't have a technical background and knew all about radio and all of that beforehand?
No. And the funny thing is I have no RF background. I have no electronics background, no electrical background, and no software background. So I didn't even study software programming or anything like that in school. In fact, I only finished 3 semesters of college. I had started a business 6 or 7 months, maybe a little bit more than that, as I was entering college, roughly about the same time. And the business grew to the point where I had to make a decision. And well, I was 19 and I didn't make the wisest decision, but the business won out.
So uh, you've since upgraded, I presume, from that technician.
Yes, it took me, I want to say 3 or 4 months. Maybe it was right after field day. I did go to the first field day. I did not participate, but just went and kind of observed things at a local club. And I believe it was right after that that I upgraded to general. And then it was almost a year to the day that I'd taken my tech test that I went ahead and sat down for the extra exam and became an extra class license.
So you touched a little bit earlier, and I think one of the things that intrigued me, and I thought would be interesting for the rest of the club, in particular, because there's a lot of members here that are doing portable operations. We've got some soda fanatics and POTA, a lot of portable operations in various shapes and forms, and then there's also a great deal of interest in preparedness. So we don't commonly have tornadoes here, but a lot of the people that are watching this tonight have experienced some pretty nasty fires, which is kind of prevalent in the area that we're at. And so the emergency preparedness is of a great interest to many of us. Here's kind of an off-the-wall question, and this is for my own edification. You know, we hear MCOM as being referenced. Do you view that as being different than just being prepared to do emergency communications? How would you describe that, and how does your operating fit into those areas?
The way I think about it, MCOM is when we're working with ARES or RACES or something like that and working for a served agency. When we're talking about just emergency communications, that may just be my own personal emergency. And that's what I try to get people to think about. It would kind of be silly for you guys maybe to prepare for a tornado, the same as it would be for me to prepare for a hurricane. So each area has got its different challenges and its different potential disasters. And you should really look at what's most likely to happen in your area. If you live in the Southeast, it's almost guaranteed there's going to be a tornado every single spring. With that tornado, it's going to be a very localized event, but if it happens 1,000 yards from your home, it definitely impacts you. Another example, and this was something you can't prepare for, but in preparing for other things you kind of cover, we went through the explosion back on Christmas morning of this past year, the explosion in downtown Nashville that took out the AT&T building. So that was kind of the most recent event for me. In where you guys weren't affected in that part of the country, but here I had no internet and no cell phone. That was where I was able to take the skills that I talk about on the channel as far as using WinLink to communicate not only with other ham radio operators, but you can use that to communicate with non-ham radio operators. And one of the coolest things about that is we can actually send a text message from WinLink to somebody's mobile device if you understand how that system works. So there is a difference in my mind between MCOM and emergency communications. They do overlap, but there's definitely a difference between the two.
Do you participate in local RACES and ARES there?
We do not have RACES here, but yes, I am a member of our local ARES group. I wish they were more active than they are. Most of the things they do, and it's not a bad thing by no means, they support bike races and parades and things like that. I would like to see more training exercises is my thing. I'm all about practicing this stuff on a regular basis.
I see Armstead, our local representative, nodding his head and smiling as you were saying that. So, yeah, that's something as a club we've participated a bit in some of the events here. There's the Pikes Peak Hill Climb and several the Pikes Peak Marathon activities have had amateur radio operators, and I know some of our club members have participated in that in past years. This past 2020 we'll try to forget because that's just not the norm, and hopefully some of these things will come back soon. So regarding your operating, do you have preferences on VHF, UHF versus HF? Describe your station, your own station, fixed and portable, and what kind of modes do you like to operate?
So first of all, everything I own is portable. I do not have a fixed base station. So if it's sitting there, everything's power poled, and it takes literally less than 10 minutes to get it into a bag and ready to go. I try to keep a modular setup so that if I want to take, say, a QRP radio this time, I grab it and a smaller battery. If I want to go QRO, I grab the 891 and a larger battery. So I do have fixed stations, and my radios are almost always on in the shack, but I do take almost every single radio portable with me. As far as modes that I operate, I have focused heavily, probably the last 18 months to 2 years, on digital modes. And any of them, all of them. PSK 31, which is not a overly popular mode anymore. JS8 call, WinLink, Packet, and APRS. And those have kind of been my favorite modes. Lately, I have been focusing quite a bit more and doing a bit more experimenting with 2-meter. And this came because of the experience that we gained from Nashville, or from the Nashville outage. My daughter lives less than a half a mile from us, and we have a grandchild that's less than a year old. My wife is not a ham radio operator, neither is my daughter. But during that outage, my wife looked at me and she said, "You need to figure out how to communicate with my daughter so I can check on our grandchild."
I get that.
You're the communicator. You figure it out. I didn't have a good solution for that. I now am a licensed GMRS operator as well, since that covers the entire family, and we can use more powerful radios. I can make that happen in a simplex fashion. But I guess that's kind of one of the reasons after that Nashville explosion, it's not necessarily, sometimes we just need to communicate with those within a short radius of us, say 5 miles, because that's the impacted area. And I think I'd gotten so focused on HF that I had overlooked that portion of it. So now I'm starting to back up and try to look at both sides of the equation. 2 meters might not do me any good for sending WinLink if the local gateway's down because it's experiencing the same internet outage, and we may need to go to HF there. But if we need to, we might just need to talk to somebody locally, a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles away. So that was just something that I found out I had overlooked. So that's kind of where I've been playing with a little bit of 2-meter a bit more over the last 2 to 3 months.
So I think I'd like to dig in a little bit more on just what that portable setup looks like. But before you get there, any opinions on the digital modes? I know that you've been in contact with the developer of JS8 Call, and are familiar with some of that work. I've seen a couple of your videos. describe what your opinions of that mode and how you think that that might be useful to us.
That is an absolutely fantastic piece of software, and it has a lot more emergency communications capabilities than I think most people realize at first. Everybody here is probably familiar with FT8, since it's probably the biggest digital mode right now that's out there. JS8 Call is built on top of the FT8 underlying platform. So it has the same weak signal capability, but instead of just being able to exchange a call sign, a grid square, and a signal report, we can now actually have a keyboard to keyboard conversation, much like we did in the PSK 31 days. Where JS8 Call goes above and beyond, though, is two things that it offers. It offers a relay feature. So maybe I can't hear Colorado right now due to propagation, but I can pick up somebody in Kansas who's also hearing the Colorado station. Provided everything is configured correctly, and it's fairly easy to configure, I can actually use the station in Kansas to relay the message on to Colorado. And the station in Kansas doesn't even have to be at his keyboard, provided he's just turned on the relay capability. So that is one fantastic feature of JS8 Call. The second thing that JS8 Call gives us is the ability to leave messages. So if you're not at your computer right now, but you've left JS8 Call running, I can bounce that message through Kansas and leave it on your screen so that when you get back, maybe you were out shoveling snow or trying to clear debris. When you get back, that message is sitting right there on your screen waiting for you. So it's got a lot of capabilities. Jordan Sure is the developer of JS8 Call, and I don't think Jordan is done quite yet. I think over the next year or two, you're going to be seeing some new features coming. I don't have any insider knowledge, but I've just got a sneaking suspicion that he's not done with that software yet.
That's pretty fascinating. Let's go into your portable operations. I know that you've done some evaluations on antennas, on batteries, solar panels. I'm not even sure the specific question, but can you just describe what your kit looks like, and where are you? Do you think you'll be focusing on making improvements, or just what's the status of your kit? Are you happy with it, or is there work to be done yet?
I think there's always work to be done, and I think the more time we spend in the field, the more we're going to learn, and the more it's going to drive the decisions we make going forward. For instance, and I can get into more details on the kit, but I want to kind of focus on this one thing for a second. For probably the first 4 years that I had a license, as a general, I always used an antenna tuner with my radio. Well, in the field, that presents two problems. Often we're using lower power because we're on battery. So we're trying to conserve that battery power. If you're using an antenna tuner, more than just maybe cleaning up an antenna, you're not using the most efficient antenna you could. And by going to a better antenna, we can maybe further reduce the power of the radio, and also be saving battery power at the same time. In addition to that, if we're carrying the tuner into the field, that's one more piece of gear. That's extra weight that we're carrying, and it's one more potential point of failure. So as I learned and understood more about antennas and being efficient, that was just one of the decisions I made. So the gear is almost constantly changing because of we go out, we gain that experience, we have a success or a failure, we're going to shift something, maybe slightly, maybe it's something major. But I think it's just about, spending more time in the field and learning what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Batteries, I did mention that. I don't know if anybody is still running the old SLA or the gel batteries. If you're still on that, move over to lithium iron phosphate. That is the only way to go if you're going to work portable. You got half the weight and twice the power in that battery technology.
So obviously what you've been talking about is a wide range of fairly technical subjects. And you mentioned that you weren't educated as an engineer. You have a job that's technical, but not radio necessarily related. How did you do this? I mean, you're doing some very technical work with Linux and the Raspberry Pis and integrating it with radios. How did you do that? Help the members that feel that maybe they didn't have that technical background. Just, how do you do it?
The short, truthful answer is I've broken a Raspberry Pi a bunch of times. That's the honest truth right there. Once you start playing with the Raspberry Pi, if you don't have that technical background, I didn't understand Linux when I started down this path. The first thing you need to do, and I've got about a 3.5-minute video on it, is how to back up the Raspberry Pi. It's the number one. Guys will ask me, where do I start? Figure out how to back up your Raspberry Pi. That's the number one thing. And then the biggest mistake I see with guys coming into it, I'll get an email from someone and it's not just one thing is not working. They're telling me about 6 different things that aren't working correctly, and they want to fix all of it with one email. And what I try to get guys to do is stop and focus on one thing. What do you want to do with a Raspberry Pi? Just because it's capable of sending WinLink, maybe that's not where you need to start. So pick your favorite thing to do. Maybe that's FT8, maybe that's JS8 call, maybe that's WinLink. And let's focus on that one particular thing until you've got it installed, you've got it configured correctly, you kind of understand the way the components work together, and then back up your Raspberry Pi and move to the next item. There's a lot of information online. You've got to be willing to do your own research. If you call me up and you got a question about the 891 and how it interfaces, the Yaesu 891 and how it interfaces to the Raspberry Pi, I can probably answer that question. If you call me up and ask me about the ICOM 7300, I'm lost. I don't own that radio. So if there's one little setting off in that radio that I'm just unfamiliar with, that's where you're going to have to do your own research. But there's YouTube out there, and there is probably 10 different forums that you can follow. Build-A-Pi has its own forum, so that if you do find something that you can't quite figure out how to get it configured, you post a question over on the forums, and there will be guys coming in there trying to help you figure it out. And if it's the 891, I can probably give you the answer. Again, if it's the ICOM 7300, some of the other members that run that radio that's familiar with the ins and outs of it will be able to be there and help you. Don't be scared to break it. It's a $40 computer, and the SD cards cost about $7 a piece for a 32 gig card these days. So buy 2 or 3 cards and just start playing with it. You don't have to use it immediately as your main computer for ham radio. Take it and just use it as a toy until you kind of get more and more comfortable with it. So
I've seen the stream of emails in that forum. So, do you sleep, or are you an insomniac and up early to answer those questions? Do you have any spare time?
I do have spare time, but typically my day starts at 5 a.m. and I'm in my office by 5:30. And then depending on how that day goes and what's on the agenda for the day, I may be up here for 8 hours. I may only have 2 hours to spend here this morning. So it seems like a lot that's going on. And yeah, those email streams can get a little overwhelming at times. But that's one of the great things about the community is they're able to jump in and help a lot of times, especially on some of the real basic questions when somebody is first, they literally just booted up their Raspberry Pi the first time and they want to know where to download, say, Build-A-Pi. So that's kind of an easy one that some of the other guys can point them to. So that is becoming more and more helpful, having that community around Build-A-Pi.
Is that community totally informal, or do you have a couple of key people that you rely on and work with helping you?
It's informal, but I know certain forum members that say have specific radios that I can call on. I may send them a private message or an email behind the scenes and just ask for help with one particular topic or something like that when I know that that's kind of in their wheelhouse. But it's not really formally structured. We're all volunteers and we do the best we can with the time available.
So you've made a number of improvements over the past months. Are you getting ideas on where you'd like to see Build-A-Pi go, and the capability to support your operation from your own experiences when you go to the field, or are they coming in from the forum?
They come from everywhere. I don't know if Build-A-Pi will ever be done, and I'm not sure where it's going. I had no clue it was going to become what it did when I wrote that first script. It was literally just, I kept seeing the same problems over and over again. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just sit down, and I had done some programming in high school. And that was a few years ago. But I sat down and I started just kind of poking at it to make life a bit easier for people. But I get ideas from a wide variety of places. Patrons will make suggestions. I get suggestions in the forums about things that different people would like to see. One thing that was just asked about, I believe it was yesterday, was DRATs. And that is not something that I'm actually even familiar with. So I'm like, I'm going to have to research that before I could consider adding it in. Sometimes it's my own ideas. I told you that I was playing with 2-meter sideband and 2-meter FM a bit more lately. And if you guys have seen the recent videos that I did where I've been on top of Short Mountain here in Tennessee, I needed a way to be able to calculate distance and bearings between two grid squares on the fly and be able to do that with no internet connection. That's one of the key things with me, is I try not to ever rely on the internet to accomplish something. I have seen times when the internet either is out or not available. So I'd rather do it without the internet if I can. So for that particular instance, I couldn't find a good application. I found a command line application that I cannot remember the lady's name. Diane, or I can't recall. Diane is her first name. She had written this simple little application that did exactly what I wanted. And then I took and wrote a GUI interface to go around it. And I will be putting that in Build-A-Pi soon. So it's a combination of different ideas from the community and my own that eventually wind up being part of Build-A-Pi.
So I'm kind of coming down to the, I've got a couple more questions left. So back, if the group would think of some questions here and be available in a little bit. What do you find to be the most difficult part of the hobby for you?
For me personally,
Yes.
anything hardware related. Hardware eats my lunch. I don't have that electrical background. I don't have an electronics background. So if you hand me a wiring diagram, it doesn't matter if it's written in English, Spanish, or Russian. I can't read it. And it's aggravating. It is aggravating at times, but I guess I've come to the point that I've accepted software is kind of my forte, and I'm going to leave the hardware up to somebody else. If anybody ever tells me to build a homemade cable to go between the Raspberry Pi and the ham radio, I'm out. It's just not my thing, and that's probably the hardest thing for me in this hobby.
Well, it's a good thing that USB cables don't cost very much then.
That's right.
So what do you find, what's the most enjoyable aspect? You've turned amateur radio into a bit of a job here. So if you have some spare time and just what do you wish you had more time to do?
I wish I had more time to experiment. I absolutely love going out and trying things. And okay, here's another one of those that's just over my head. I don't understand it. We were doing the 2-meter sideband mountain to mountain here in Tennessee. It was about 100-mile shot. During this, I'm using a log periodic antenna on my side. He has a vertical antenna on his side. We're both vertically polarized to begin with, and I can't hear the station on FM. So I'm getting ready to give up and actually move to 2-meter sideband for another experiment. Lower my antenna. I flip to horizontal configuration. I don't get the antenna back in the air 6 or 8 feet. And all of a sudden, I can hear the guy that I couldn't hear a while ago. Now, I remember from my tech test, that's not supposed to work. It's supposed to be much worse when you're cross polarized. But for whatever reason, we actually had a better signal between us once we were cross polarized. But getting out and experimenting and playing with those type things is probably my absolute favorite thing to do.
Maybe there was a reflection in there that might have changed the polarization.
That's what. So the couple of people that I've talked with, knife edge is what they suspect happened, and it changed changed it. I would have never known that. That's it was just kind of baffling to me while I was in the field and watching it happen.
I've got one question on your path. You said you didn't really know where the Build-A-Pi is headed. Have you thought something that's been very popular and on my eye for a while is some of the Node-RED integration? Are you familiar with Node-RED?
That's kind of interesting. I was on a live stream yesterday morning on YouTube, and Node-RED was brought up, and now again this evening. And I have not even, I've never played with Node-RED at all. So I'm not even sure how that might be integrated with Build-A-Pi.
We'll have to talk about that later on the forum, perhaps.
Okay.
I'm going to.
Hold on, a question for you.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Jason, you mentioned that there's a forum available. I don't see it referenced from your GitHub page. Where would I find the forum?
Go to groups.io and search for my call sign, okay. And you should be able to. Tell you what, I'm going to grab it on my side and post it in the chat for you guys real quick.
I've already got it too. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I just stuck it in the chat.
I am scrolling through the chat here. If anybody wants to jump in and ask a question. Barry, you've got to have a question.
Always all kinds of questions for me. So, Jason, what you figure out for your Invest antenna? Did you find out any good antenna that you kind of settled in on?
Are you referencing one antenna in particular, or just some of the experiments that I've played with in the past?
The experiments in the past, what's worked for you. I've seen a couple of your Invest attempts, and the good part and the bad parts.
And I've had a lot of bad parts. That's all part of the learning experience, right? Yes. So lately I have been using my own 49-to-1 infed half wave. That's good 10, 15, 20, and 40. Obviously, it's only good for Invest for 40 meters. But that's the one that I've kind of been playing with the most lately. I haven't been working a lot of 80 meters over the last 6-7 months, where I was playing with a lot of 80 meters prior to that. I still love the infed antenna by TN07.com. That's the IMD 109. And I absolutely love that. It will give you 6 through 80 meters with no tuner. And it's the antenna that I run here at home as my primary antenna.
Yeah, I've been playing with the 9-to-1, but that requires a tuner. But I've been having a lot of fun with that 9-to-1. It's kind of an unrated, underestimated for capability as far as I'm concerned.
The 9-to-1 is a great antenna, and I actually have one of those sitting somewhere in a box. And the advantage of the 9-to-1 is a lot of times you can get them up if you're a bit more limited on space. But I've gone to that 49-to-1 just so I could eliminate that tuner from the setup.
You've done a great job with the scripts, maybe even too good of a job. Because when I first got started, I didn't know anything about Linux whatsoever. And then I followed you for step-by-step on your initial loading of programs. And that initial loading of programs and everything else helped me learn Linux. So that's with your scripts, fantastic. I love them. But you lose some capabilities with Linux when you do that.
You do, yeah, Build-A-Py does do a lot of the things in the background for you to where you don't learn some of those things. That's kind of a double-edged sword. If we make it too complicated, then we scare people off from the Raspberry Pi. If we make it too easy, they don't learn some of the things that I think you should have just a basic understanding of Linux. Where I try to walk that line is when I am doing a tutorial that requires you to be on the command line. I try to spell out every single command and assume that the guy on the other side watching that video has never seen Linux before. So if I run something that I think is simple, like an ls command, and an ls command simply lists out the contents of that directory, but I try to tell people exactly what's happening when I do that. That way we can both learn a little bit about it and try to make it easier for people who are just getting started.
I need to commend you for that, because there are a lot of people that do instructional, or let me back up, attempt to do instructional videos and just assume that the listener or watcher knows those sorts of things. And you do a phenomenal job of walking through the detail to do that. And well done.
Thank you. I did get caught on that one time. I did a tutorial on a Raspberry Pi that I'd been running for probably a month, and it worked fine on my system. And when the video hit, the channel was still very small, thankfully, probably only 500 or 600 subscribers at that time. When they tried to follow that step-by-step tutorial, it wasn't working. And it took me a little while to figure out why, because I was running on a system that I had already installed some other software that was required for this new software, but I'd forgotten that I installed it, and I forgot to mention it to those that were doing it. So I ended up taking that video down, and I learned right then, if we're going to do a tutorial, I burn a fresh copy of the operating system before every single tutorial. So it's a brand new Pi when I start to do a tutorial. So if it works there, it will work on your system.
So if people haven't been following you, all of your videos are not just purely technical. When we were chatting recently, you had just done a video. Was it Winter Field Day, possibly, where you had done some time-lapse videos showing you driving up to the mountaintop and operating in the cabin.
Oh,
very
yes.
entertaining. So I don't recall what it was, what the title of it was, but just if you want to see what it takes to go set up a portable station and the kind of fun you can have, that is a great video to watch of Jason's.
That's sights and sounds of Winter Field Day. And I'm sorry if I'm not looking at the camera. I'm actually trying to find a link to that video. I wasn't really certain how the community was going to respond with that video. And I'm going to put that in the chat for everybody.
Well, I'm not speaking for the community. I'm speaking for myself right now, but I hope it was received well.
It was. That was the first video that I'd ever done in that style. I was really just looking to put something out different, but also challenge myself as a filmmaker. I've been a professional photographer the vast majority of my adult life, but video is completely different than shooting photographs. It's a 6-minute video, and I never say a single word through the entire video.
You should see him throw a weight into a tree.
I'm sorry?
I said you should see him throw a weight into a tree. He's awesome.
Well, you know what? I didn't even remember that it wasn't that you hadn't spoken in it, but you did a great job of telling the story without ever speaking. So that was that. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. I need some help from the group now. I have gone through my list of questions and I've ad-libbed as best I can. So somebody else, please hop in here.
Lauren, you've done a great job tonight.
Well, it's a first for me tonight to do something like this. So thank you for that. And thank you for the comments in the chat window.
Jason, when you're operating, do you prefer battery or solar or both?
It depends. If I'm going to go out, let's say I've got a limited window of time to operate, and I know that I'm only going to operate for 2 hours today, and I'm going to be running single sideband at 50 to 100 watts. I know from past experience, a 8 amp hour or 2 8 amp hour batteries is going to carry me through that experience. So often I'll have the solar panel with me and never connect it. If it's going to be an event where I'm going to be out there, overnight, such as Winter Field Day or Field Day, then I'm definitely going to be running a solar panel. So it really all depends on, for a lack of a better word, what's the mission when we go out? And what that mission is that's what's going to dictate what equipment I carry with me.
Larry, oh, go ahead, Stephen. Keep going.
Yeah, one more just follow on to that question. When you're operating at home, are you still running off a battery with the charger just charging the batteries?
So I've just, in the past, yes. I have just kind of redone my shack. It had become a nightmare over the last year just with all the testing, constantly taking equipment in and out of the shack, hooking up different things to radios. Before I had a SLA battery, it was a 35 amp hour SLA battery that did have the ability to hook up to a trickle charger coming off of my primary power supply. There was also a switch in there that if I lost power, it would automatically roll over to the batteries. Since I've done the upgrade, I'm planning to move that to lithium iron phosphate, and I just need to find the low loss power gate that is compatible with the lithium iron phosphate batteries. So that's something I'll be adding sometime probably in the next, I'm going to say 30 to 60 days. I've got the battery. I've got most of the components. That low loss power gate's the one missing component right now.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll be watching.
So Larry N0AMP asks, do you have a recommended Pi version for Build-A-Pi?
The hardware itself, the Raspberry Pi itself?
Yes.
Yeah, if I was going to buy a Raspberry Pi at this point, it would be a Pi 4 and a minimum of a 4 gig version. The 8 gig will run you about $20 more. You will not notice currently any difference between the 4 gig model and the 8 gig model. I always say go ahead and get the 8 if you can. If budget is not a problem, it will kind of help future-proof you a bit more. But if you are on a limited budget, then the Pi 4 gig will be a perfect substitute.
And if you've got a pile of 3Bs in the shack, will they work?
Absolutely, they'll work. They're going to be slower. And I try to tell people, don't get rid of your 3s. Because especially if you want them to do one task. In fact, I just rebuilt my APRS digipeater here at home, and I used a Raspberry Pi 3 for that. It's a perfect box for that because it's doing one task and it's doing one task very well. I'm not asking a lot of that Pi, and honestly, putting a Raspberry Pi 4 on there would be a waste of resources. So depending on what you're doing, in fact, I still have a Raspberry Pi 2 running that serves as a web server here in my shack.
So Greg, W0JS asks, type of solar panel for field use versus home use. Do you have a favorite panel for taking to the field?
Yes. And again, I try to cover both sides of this spectrum here. With ham radio, you can throw as little or as much money as you want at it. If you want to talk on local repeaters, you can buy a Baofeng. You can buy top of the line ICOM Yaesu radios and spend $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. If budget is not a problem, Power Film is a fantastic solar company when you want to take that and go portable with it. If you're on a more limited budget, I've actually done a review. It's called a $100 versus $300 solar panel, our challenge between the two of them. There is a folding solar panel on Amazon that is a pretty dadgum good panel for like half the money of that, twice the power and half the money of the Power Film.
Okay. So for my own edification, I noticed that you're doing some APRS. I think you had a recent video on APRS. Why would I want to have an APRS running on my station here at home?
You probably, more times than not, you don't necessarily want an APRS station running at home. The only time you would want to do that, you would actually want to look at what other digipeaters are in your area. If there aren't any, then yes, you could provide a valuable service to the community by putting a digipeater up. Another good use case if you're at home is maybe you're in kind of a dead spot. Maybe you're in a valley where APRS coverage is not that great. That would be a perfect use case to put up an APRS digipeater. But if you've already got good coverage in your area for APRS, you can actually do more harm than good by putting a digipeater up and just flooding the one frequency that we have. You got to remember that that's a simplex frequency. And if you run into too many packet collisions, you can actually do more harm than good. Does that kind of answer that for a home station?
Yeah, it does. And that kind of described me. I've got a good bit of rock on three sides of me. So I've got a view to the south, and that's about it for a line of sight. So I might be in a place where I could provide that service.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there another digipeater that you can get to the south?
If I go out and start holding my handheld in the certain position and lean out over the balcony or the railing on my patio on the second floor, yes. If I'm anywhere else in the house, no, I can't.
Okay. Yeah, that may be a perfect place to look to, provide what's called a fill-in digipeater, to where you could put that up on a bit of a higher antenna, and anybody in that area could hit your digipeater, which would repeat it back out to a wide area gateway.
Jason, do you do any packet or like on BBS, bulletin board systems?
So there's another one of those that's kind of been brewing in the background. I told you guys earlier, I'd love to have more time to experiment. I actually have a BBS system running here at home. I've got a WinLink gateway running that's got a BBS on it and a chat server. I just haven't had enough time to really sit down and play with that and learn enough about it. The more I learned about it, the more complex it became. And I'd really like to learn more about it. I'd like to learn more about routing and things like that before I tried to do a video on it. Again, a lot of guys are tying those together over the internet, and that is definitely something I want to avoid.
Yeah, that JS8 call and the BBS is so in line with each other. It's just the JS8 call is a great program.
Absolutely. But yeah, I have played with Packet. I built the gateway just to see if I could, and that's actually been running for probably 2 or 3 years. It was one of the first projects I did on Linux when I was first learning. I've since added that BBS, but yeah, it became very complicated very quickly, and I definitely need more time to experiment with it.
So, Jason, what haven't we asked? What have we missed? Any further thoughts?
Don't buy a Raspberry Pi tonight. Wait until you see tomorrow's video.
Okay. I was going to. By the way, I told Jason ahead of time that we fully expect a little bit of self-promotion in here, expected and welcomed. So that's. I'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, it's. I've got a new Raspberry Pi build coming out. This one is not designed for portable. It is specific to the shack for a couple of different reasons, but catch the video tomorrow because I'm pretty excited to have it sitting on the table right now.
Come on, give us a tease.
It's fast.
All right, everybody. Going once, going twice. Jason, you have been just a great guest for us, and really appreciate the time and agreeing to meet up with us here this evening. Good fun, and you're doing stellar work, and just keep it up. Is there any way we can help you?
No, keep watching the channel. Give it a thumbs up, and that's all I ask for. If you got a question, jump in the forums, post a question there. They are moderated. Everybody's first post is moderated. It's just the way we kind of had to set things up. As long as you don't post something absolutely ridiculous or want to help me with my SEO search or optimization, we'll go ahead and approve you, and you won't have to deal with that anymore.
All right. Well, on behalf of the Tri-Lakes Monument Club, thank you very much for your time tonight.
It's been a great honor to be here. And did I see someone, KZOQ, did you raise your hand?
Oh, I was just going to say, I put a link to your Patreon channel up there. For any of us that want to provide a few dollars to Jason to help him out, please visit the Patreon link. And
thank you.
Let's share. Let's help fund.
Yep. And hopefully, I guess all the members will give you some feedback on whether they like this format of presentation or not.
I expect we will. Greg, you haven't been around for the last couple of meetings to close them off. Do you wanna shut us down for the night?
Well, once again, Jason, thank you very much. I learned a lot. I enjoyed the presentation. I like the format, by the way. I thought you both handled it well. So
Lauren may have a new job.
He may have a new job. I don't know if he wants a new job. So anyway, we'd like to thank you once again. We appreciate all the information. I think everybody's enjoyed the Build-A-Pie, and I think that's on my workbench right now. I have a 3B, but I'm going to give it a go. In any event, thanks a lot. We'll see everybody at the next monthly meeting, which is, as I recall, April 19th. So just look for the link in the weekly update. And with that, I'd like to say goodnight to all.
Thank you, Greg.
All right.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
7-3, guys. Thanks for having
Thanks,
me.
Jason. Appreciate it again.
Yep, thanks for talking to us all. I appreciate it.